so I want to do a video on telling the story. So if you're experiencing a reality or a situation that you don't like, then really look closely at the story that you're telling about it. So I think I mentioned this in my last video and I wanted to expand on it. So sometimes I think you can meet somebody and due to past beliefs and then you manifest a little something like a little behavior, and it can very quickly get out of hand and it can snowball and it can become a whole story that you're creating that and it can be sort of gender specific too, like all men are players, men don't really like commitment. You can have I always get rejected, I always get left for a third party, I always meet something I've seen a lot of people write is I actually genuinely have seen people write, I tend to meet people and then they go on to meet the one, and I'm there and I heal people and then they go on to find love. And the thing is, then the more it starts to happen, the more you tell it, the more it happens, the more you tell it, the more it happens. And it takes to rewrite a story, I really think it's time to just lock the walls in. And because I think it's Neville that says, if you start to tell people, then you're just going to be confronted with all your doubts, because everybody is you pushed out. So when you're first trying to change your story and you're saying, oh no, all men want commitment, they all want to get married, all men are super faithful, my specific person that I'm thinking about, they all want to be with me, I'm not just like a person they want to heal with. And as soon as you start telling that story and you speak about it, then you'll get your doubts mirrored back to you. So you might hear the exact opposite, or you might see somebody, or you might witness something that shows you the complete opposite to what you're trying to affirm, and then that will make you kind of slip back. So I really find just like shutting off is the best way to change a story. Just be like, I'm just going to shut myself off. I'm going to only listen to things that inspire me, and I'm going to affirm. And this is the thing, creating becomes effortless at some point, but it's like everything, you have to build the muscle. It's not necessarily, I do see people say, oh, it's effortless, don't make it difficult. And I do sometimes affirm, creating my reality is effortless, like everything I desire comes to me instantly. But I'm also super aware that if that's not a deep-seated belief, and you can have the deep-seated belief on one thing and not in another, then it does require training, it requires building up so that it becomes easy. It's like anything in life, like you say you start a sport at the beginning. I remember when I first went skiing, I was knackered after every go, and everything felt so challenging. And then you become better and you just fly down the slopes and everything's super easy, and actually then it's a bit disappointing because you don't feel knackered at all. You actually just feel like you've not even had a workout. And it's the same. So I don't want to say to people, you don't need to do this and you don't need to do this step, because I think they're all really important steps in the process if that's the journey that you're going on. It's just that they need to be leading you to understand that all that matters is your belief and the story you tell yourself and others. I have actually in the past lied to friends. Like, I don't promote lying but sometimes it just really, especially when you have that really negative, pessimistic friend that always is like, no, this person's no good, they're never going to change, it's this, and oh, you sure you want to do that? Or you've got maybe a parent that's like, oh, I don't know, do you really want to go freelance? Maybe you should just get a job. And the thing is, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. So you've got all this kind of negative stuff coming at you, and it's not easy to like fight against it. That's where I've got back to my train of thought now. So sometimes I actually just, especially with friends, you can get away with it. I mean, and the thing is that the lie then just blends into reality. I've had a few occasions where I've just said to friends, this is happening, and I've just spanned this whole kind of fantastic story, and then I've told them later, I've laughed about it because it's actually become a reality. So I'm like, oh, when I told you though, it wasn't. But I'm not a liar. I'm actually super honest. I'm actually so honest that I don't that I get myself into trouble sometimes. But when it comes to this, you've got to do what you've got to do, and you've got to live the dream, and you've got to, when you've got to make a big shift in where you are because you're really dissatisfied with where you are, it does take, I think it can take a few weeks to just really change that story inside of yourself. Well, it takes as long as it takes. At the beginning, it takes maybe years, then months, then weeks, then day, then, it depends what it is to you and how big a belief you've built up to the false story, and how big a belief you have in manifesting as well, and how big a belief you have in your own power over situations. That's actually the key. So if you don't believe, I actually find like a really good place to start is looking at the things that you've created that you didn't want. Because if you haven't created very much that you actively sought to create, another good way of really proving to yourself that you're the creator of your experience is to look at the things that you didn't want that happened and showed up, and how they manifested. Like, so did you say, oh, I knew this was going to happen, I knew that if I left my job and started being self-employed, that I'd run out of money and everything would tumble down around me and I'd be broke and I wouldn't get work and it would be so unreliable. And then it happens and you look back and you're like, oh. So sometimes you can actually kind of find empowerment in just owning the things that you didn't want. And as soon as you kind of understand that you created them, it gives you a lot more of a feeling of empowerment that, well, I created them, so that means that I can do the opposite and I can uncreate them just as easily as I created them. But it does take consistency. I think that's a big thing that's missing. People have a bit of a go and then it doesn't work, and then they say, this doesn't work for me. But it's like everything, it's about consistency. Until you've trained the muscle, at the beginning it's difficult, you fall over, you make mistakes, but the more you train the muscle, the stronger belief you build in it. So the story that you're telling is really important, and be really careful with that. And like I said, I think sometimes to shift that story, it really takes going inside of yourself and looking at the world for a bit, and just really, whatever you need to do to get into that state, motivational videos, affirming to yourself over and over again. And then I always notice the first thing to show up is, like I said, because I'm connected to some of those readings on YouTube and Instagram, I'll start to see that they change and they reflect what I've been. And that, I quite like them. It gives me a bit of motivation. It's like, yeah, I'm shifting. And then you start to feel good. I feel like a lot of these law of attraction videos, they kind of get it the wrong way round. They try to get you to feel good to create what you want. And for me personally, that's never actually really done much. Like, I felt amazing at times and I've not bought anything in that I wanted. And I felt, not that great, and I've bought in stuff. And I realized that actually the more that I believe in myself as a creator, and the more that I don't see myself as a victim, and the more empowered that I feel, that it naturally lifts my vibe and makes me feel in a better space. I don't really subscribe to getting into a good space to get the things that I want. I believe in understanding my true power, which lifts me and makes me feel elevated and makes me realize all things are possible. And then I naturally feel higher, and it sort of all goes round in a circle like that. So be really careful with the story that you tell yourself. If you've been telling yourself and you've let things spiral so far out of control with, oh, my person's married, he's never going to leave his wife, then, and you told your friends, and you've moaned about it, it really takes that shift. And I really think a week or 2 weeks of solid, consistent commitment to telling a new story is actually enough to really like set the groundwork so you can then go out again into the world and kind of move forth with a new conviction and direction. So yeah, be really aware of the stories that you tell yourself, the stories that you tell your friends, and the stories that you have about the opposite gender or same gender or whoever you date in general, because they can also really affect things. I remember I used to always think men were players, so I obviously used to meet a lot of players, but I mean, they weren't necessarily people I was dating. I just, all men, you know, I'd get all my beliefs about men affirmed to me even through like male friends or random men I just talked to or people I would work with. And then once I changed and shifted my beliefs on men, then I started to meet different caliber of men, like men that were just loved the idea of love and wanting to be, you know, in soulful relationships and intimate relationships. So be really careful about the stories that you're telling of a whole gender specific that you're attracted to as well. And because, you know, all that has to change is your state. It's like when people say, you know, you get the thing, oh, I should just be a lesbian because, you know, men are so difficult. Well, guess what? Women are difficult too. I know I have friends that date same sex and they find relating experiences just as difficult. It's got nothing to do with a gender of people and everything to do with you and the beliefs that you have. So I hope this video helped, and I'll speak to you soon.